Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. I am so excited for my guest today to have Carrie Garza on with me. Carrie, tell everybody kind of who you are.
So my name is Carrie Garza, and currently I am the principal of Timber Lakes Elementary in Splendora ISD, and we're opening in August 2020. So this has been an important journey of just opening this new school.
Oh man, I can't even imagine the amount of stress going into opening a new school, but especially during these times. So bless you for giving me a few minutes today. Thank you. But Carrie, I want to start where I start with all my guests, and that's back at the beginning. So when you were a kid, dreaming what you were going to be when you were older, what did you dream you were going to be, and was educator even on that list?
So I was on a Twitter chat the other day, and that was one of the questions that was posed, right? What did you want to be when you grew up? When you grow up? And I had said I wanted to be an actress because I really did. I really thought I wanted to be on the big screen. And my drama teacher, who currently works in our district as well, so now we're colleagues, which is really interesting. He did a great job of kind of inspiring us to follow your dreams, whatever that happens to be, follow your dreams. And so, of course, that didn't happen, but I had always been a part of teaching kids even as a teenager. My parents were in ministry. And so when your parents are in ministry, like you are too, like you don't even have a choice. Like you can teach Sunday school, children's church, missionettes, but you're going to do something. So find your job and get busy. So that's kind of where my love of teaching started. And I just always wanted to be a teacher. Like once that infused in my soul, that's what I knew.
So when did you know that you were ready to then go from that next step from teacher to administrator?
So I was walking my kids down the hallway. It was, at the time, it was named Splendora Intermediate. It's now Greenleaf. We now have several elementaries. But I was walking my kids down the hallway. You know, as teachers do, we walk backwards, right? And we're talking to the kids. Thank you for standing in line. You guys are doing a great job. And my assistant principal walked up to me and he said, "So when are you going to start your master's?" And I said, "I don't really know what you're talking about." He said, "I just think it's time that you start thinking that way and then you get enrolled in your program." And I said, "Well, okay, but I've had young kids. I'm loving this classroom gig, right? I'm teaching fourth grade self-contained, and I love it with every piece of my heart." But he was the one, Dusty Joyner, he planted that first seed of, it's time that you need to start thinking that. Well, so from there, I enrolled in the program.
But I love what you said there, because I've had this conversation probably 10 or 15 times now on Tell Your Story about how when you get to that point to decide to shift kind of what you're doing and consider administration or something else, it doesn't ever mean that you're doing that because you don't like being in the classroom anymore. And so I love just hearing you just say that I loved what I was doing. Like, it was my whole heart. But that doesn't mean your passions can't grow and can't increase into trying other things. You don't love teaching any less because you became an administrator, but you wanted to go and pursue a different avenue. And so now being an administrator, what do you feel like you've learned about yourself through that process?
Man, I've gone through an interesting journey. I was an assistant principal, and things progressed pretty quickly once I made the transition. I became an assistant principal, and then 3 years later, I was a principal. And I was in that role and I was loving it, but we had some things happening at the house, and I felt, and Dr. Burke, who was our superintendent, he's fabulous. He uses the word pivot a lot, right? And so I think back and I just felt the Lord say, pivot, it's time to pivot. So I pivoted and I resigned from my principal position. I took out TRS. I was not interested in going back into education at all. I was done. Some things had happened, and a lot of it was related to testing. And I just felt in my soul like I can't do this with kids anymore. Like I can't sit down and have these conversations with kids about the importance of this one day all the time and all the pressure that was happening around testing. So I said, I'm out. So took out my TRS. I resigned. We were running 2 businesses. And then Hurricane Harvey hit. We lost absolutely everything. Wow. We have 2 businesses on the property. We had 6 feet of water in the home. We lost all the businesses, everything. And, so I'm like, oh God, did I miss this? What is happening? I don't know what to do now. And so, you know, we're cleaning through the devastation. We have everything outside. We're rebuilding. And we were with my mom, staying with my mom during some of it, and my mom and dad. And I came back after one day, and my Bible was open to Jonah, right? And I didn't open it because my Bible, I didn't take my Bible that day because I thought we had to wade through the water, you know, up to our waist and be rescued by a boat. And I thought, I don't want my Bible to get wet, so I'll put it really high on the shelf. That way it'll be safe. Or water got way higher than we had ever imagined. So I was out and I was kind of trying to salvage it, letting it dry out. And my Bible was open to Jonah. I thought, Lord, I will go to Nineveh. I will do whatever needs to happen because I do not want to be in the belly of that whale. So God, whatever needs to happen. But it was just kind of the beginning of again, pivot. Yes, that was supposed to happen, but now it's time to go to what's next. Yeah. So I said, I need to go back into education. I was missing it already. You know, education gets into your soul and you just can't shake it, right? But this was the pivot I needed to get back in. So I applied in Splendora, and I was hired as the instructional specialist there. And so much coaching happened for me in the district. The leaders there kind of took me where I was and not really knowing all of my story because I wasn't sure which pieces I wanted to share at that time, but did this beautiful coaching piece for me about receiving feedback, giving feedback, truly being thinking through things and being flexible. And so through that process, I have grown so much as an administrator. And so when I tell people I'm a different person than I was before Harvey, I mean that. Right. Like it totally redefined who I am and how I see the world. Right. And so then, you know, I was given this beautiful opportunity to be the principal of this new school in the district that I grew up in. Aww. So I am part of this beautiful history of Splendora ISD in this community in Splendora. And it's just when I think back through my journey of what has happened and what God has done, I'm just amazed. Yeah. I walk around in just wonderment.
Well, and when there's so many things you said there that I think really resonated with me. One of them is, I would say, I appreciate your honesty in sharing that part of the story, because I can see how some people would be really leery in sharing some of those pieces. But I think every one of those pieces of that story are integral into creating the person we see today. And so I think that's why it's so important for you to tell all of that. And I thank you, first of all, for being that honest and vulnerable. But at the same time, you know, I can't even imagine the amount of, you know, you have all this faith. You're putting faith in this is the right decision for me to take care of myself, my family, my mental health, what I believe in. And then God goes and uproots it again. And then you're like, now what? And then you go back in as an instructional coach, but you learn all these beautiful things that then lead you right to where you are now. And I think that's such a powerful reminder of, even though it sucks while we're going through it, sometimes we have to have things be swept away from us, or we have to choose to walk away from things to get to where we're meant to be. And it doesn't mean it happens that next day or that next year, but as long as we remain faithful and keep seeking out where we know we're supposed to be, it eventually takes place. And so, you know, so thank you and saying all that and being that open and vulnerable about all that, because I know, thinking about you being a school principal at that new school next year, I can just imagine how that vulnerability is going to play a part in connecting with people, because this is a brand new school, right? So everybody will be new.
Everybody will be new. And what's been so beautiful is Dr. Burke, our superintendent, and the entire leadership team, there's a system, it's called the Community-Based Accountability System. And so STAR is a part of it, but it's not the whole piece. And in so many ways, this system has saved me for education and capturing kids' hearts and all the things that we're doing. And so as I got into this system, I kept thinking, I can do this. I knew there had to be a better system, but I couldn't find it. I didn't know what it was. I know it didn't fit this, but I didn't even know this existed. So yeah, I mean, we're all new. And when I was interviewing one of the teachers, I'm okay with awkward pauses during conversations with teachers, right? Because sometimes you need that reflection. And she said to me, she goes, do you think everything that's happened to you led you to this point? And I thought that kind of hit me pretty hard. And you know, God's not done with the journey, right? There are more pieces, but I did think in the moment, yes, absolutely. Because as I sat on my front porch when we were remodeling after Heart, you know, I'm covered in sheetrock and sweat, and people are driving by our house like it's a tourist destination. And I remember thinking, like, God, there's got to be something else. What is happening? And it's just been amazing. It's just amazing.
I love that. Well, you know, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that your parents were pastors. And so did you ever consider ministry in your path? Knowing most pastor kids that I've had friendships with, they're always like, no, not for me. That was my parents.
Yeah, no, I never felt called into the ministry, but I felt like the public school was my mission field.
Exactly.
And so I always said, you know, the public school, that is my ministry. And my mom and dad knew that, and mom knows it. Like they understood that in ways probably most people do that. That's where I'm called. Yeah. Like, so I get up in the morning and I go to my mission field because that's where my kids are. Those are my teachers are, my parents are. That's my ministry.
I love that. Well, you know, one thing too that we share in common is we've both lost a parent in our lives. And I know yours is especially raw and fairly recent. And so talk to me about what that's been like to work through that loss and grief in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of planning for a new year, in the middle of like everything going on. How are you coping and making it day by day?
Yeah, well, you know, I had a wise person once say to me that grief comes in waves. And so it really does. And sometimes I feel like the wave is just kind of here and I'm okay. And sometimes I feel like it has lapped completely over me and I'm under the wave and then I have to come up for air. But my mom and my dad, because they understood the deep sense of ministry, I'm able to kind of push through some of that. So part of this story is Timberlake's Elementary will pull kids from Patton Village, and that's where my parents spent 20 years of their ministry. So back in '97, they felt this call to minister to the boys and girls in Patton Village, and they felt like it needed to happen right there in the town and not busing them to another church. So they went to find a building, and they found this little building in the middle of town, and it had actually served as a kindergarten classroom for Splendora many, many years ago. And it was full of mice and all kinds of things. But my dad was a visionary. Like, he could see a shack and go, this is going to be great. And so that's what he did. So they cleaned that out. And for 2 years, they ran a bus and they would bus these kids to this building for a Bible club. And they did that for 2 years. And so those same kids that my mom and dad have literally poured their lives into will be my kids when we open Timberlake Elementary. And so, you know, I posted on Twitter the other day when I say he literally passed me the torch. I mean, it is like, take care of my kids, Carrie. So, I'm sorry.
No.
And so we had this service on Tuesday a few weeks ago, and then on Wednesday we filmed a video for Timberlakes to show the community, and the beautiful ladies in our communication department, and they said, Carrie, if you want to reschedule. And I said, I can't, because he would tell me, get to the school, do what you need to do, go be great, and you do good things for my kids. Right. And so I just feel this pushing up, this has to be good for my kids, make this system good for my kids. And it truly has just propelled me and truly in a way that I didn't expect. And so the loss is so deep and it's so hard. And like today we went and picked up his boat from the boat shop, right? And so as it comes around the corner, I'm like, oh, my dad. Yeah. But it's just, this is all part of God's journey and the plan too. And I just have to push forward to continue what God has started and the journey of taking care of his kids.
Yeah. Well, I love what you talked about with grief at the beginning about how, grief does come in waves, and there are days when it's going to hit you out of nowhere. And there are days like when you see that boat come around the corner where you're like, it's all like it just happened in that
Yeah.
moment again. I love the beautiful side of this story, though, of your parents pouring into these kids. And like you said, it's kind of the passing of the baton of you getting to take on these kids now too. But I think the other thing that I really connected with that you said there was you said, that they asked you to do this filming and it was very soon after another event. And they were like, do you need time? And you were like, no, he would say, because, I think of my mom and people were like, I went back to work that next week when she passed, because she passed during spring break. And I went back that next minute. They're like, you're already back? And I'm like, yes, my mom would say, get your butt in there and serve those kids. And I'll be here waiting. It's not like I'm going anywhere. But I think that's we all deal with grief differently. And I know for me, getting back into more normal things helps me work through things. And so, thinking about this school year, what is your ultimate goal? Like your one big goal for your school and these kids and these adults that you're going to serve this next year?
Man, I want this beautiful culture of excitement for learning, this love of learning. Like when I see a child skip down the hall, man, my heart does this thing, right? So I saw a little girl skipping down the hall before everything started. And I said, baby, are you happy? She said, yeah, I'm happy. Man, that's what I want. I want these boys and girls to get off the bus and out of the car and say, I am loved at Timberlakes Elementary, and I am going to learn really great things today. Yeah. And then as a staff, I want evidence of learning to be everywhere. When we go into PLC and we're talking about student work, what's the evidence? Okay, so you did this skill today. Show me the evidence of the learning. I want the boys and girls to be able to tell me, this is the evidence of my learning, and this is how I learned it. This beautiful enthusiasm and this culture of love and excitement. That's my dream for Timberlakes Elementary.
I love that. Well, one other thing I want to ask you real quick before we wrap up is, the idea that I talk about in every episode is that idea of doubt. And I know that, when you are vulnerable and open with your own journey, there are doubts that are going to creep in. There are opinions that people may choose to share or think. And as a person of faith, I know there's that element there that plays into how you deal with doubt. But my question would be, how do you keep doubt at bay so that it doesn't take root into your thoughts and feelings?
So this came again as my journey from Hurricane Harvey, right? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And so I was so bad about that. I'd look at somebody and say, I need to be doing that, or man, why didn't I do that? And so some of the things the Lord has spoken to me is you run your race. You run your race, and you run it with all your heart, and you be dedicated to your race. And don't look over there, because that's not your race. You stay focused on your race. And since I've been able to get that from my head to my heart, when doubt creeps in, it just doesn't stay, because I hear that just you run your race, and it's not going to be anybody else's. It's yours.
I love that. Well, Carrie, as we wrap up today, one question I always love to end all of these conversations on is, I feel like there's so many things we hold tight to who we are and what we believe. And so for anybody watching or listening today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing for them be?
I think it would be about running your race. You've got to know what you're called to do, what your purpose in life is. And you have to stay true to that, because if not, depression or guilt, that working mom guilt will kind of get you a little bit of just, you've got to hold really tight to what your calling is, what your purpose is, and guard it with all your heart, because there will be people that will come in and sometimes intentionally seed doubt into your life. And you have to be so strong in that you can fight that off.
I love that. Well, Carrie, I have been looking forward to this conversation today. Thank you so much for your honesty, your vulnerability, and for coming on and spending some time with me on Tell Your Story today.
Thank you so much. It was truly an honor. I had so much fun.
Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Carrie has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.